much, and thank you to everybody who came out today. As Gabriel mentioned, ask questions throughout if you have them. We're going to moderate each other's presentations, and I'd frankly like to start off with having you tell the audience a little bit about what the SEC is and what it does.
Yeah, great, Jan, thanks. And I do want to just say how great it is to see all of you today, especially in my non-B'nai B'rith role, but as a member of the SEC. First, as a member of the staff, I'm required to give you a brief disclaimer before I speak. The views expressed today are my own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the SEC, its commissioners, or other members of the staff. Today, I'm going to speak to you about ways to avoid becoming a victim of fraud, in particular through investment scams. This is not intended to be legal advice or investment advice, but rather just general principles of sound investing and avoiding fraud. I also want to just briefly say that we realize that even learning about this topic can be producing anxiety or other strong emotions. Please know that we're here for you, and we're going to teach you how to avoid being a victim. There's going to be time for questions, as Jan said. You can ask throughout, or we'll leave time at the end. So to answer Jan's question, what is the SEC? We're a federal agency that regulates the nation's security markets. We often have been called the cop on the beat for Wall Street. We have a simple three-part mission: to protect investors, which is what I'm doing here today, maintain fair markets, and facilitate capital formation. What that means is allowing companies to issue stock so they can earn money so they can operate. We have broad responsibilities. We have a responsibility to regulate and review the conduct of the people we oversee, like stockbrokers, investment firms. And we also have to review the filings of every single public company in the United States to make sure they're complying with the law. In addition to that, we are also a law enforcement agency, and that's the part of the SEC that I work for. And in that role, we investigate and prosecute violations of the federal security laws. What we do is civil in nature. That is, we get money back from frauds, and we can ban people from acting in the industry if they've violated the laws. In some cases, our violations rise to the level of criminal conduct, and we often work with the Department of Justice and state prosecutors to send those folks to jail. So now that we've learned a little bit about the SEC, Jan, can you tell us a little bit about the mission of the section you work in, the consumer protection section of the AG's office?
Yeah, thanks, Frank. You know, our mission is not that different than what Frank described at the SEC. I mean, we have a dual role, if you will, both as a law enforcement agency. We are the primary enforcers or prosecutors of consumer fraud cases under the Colorado Consumer Protection Act, the Colorado Charitable Solicitations Act, and a whole litany of other consumer protection statutes. Our regulation piece, where people don't understand about our office, is we actually regulate small dollar non-bank lenders. So think about payday lending, although we don't call them that anymore. We license and regulate debt collection and debt collectors in the state of Colorado. We regulate debt settlement and debt management companies. We picked up 2 years ago student loan servicers. So even for those of you on this call, what we're seeing is a huge trend upwards in the number of older adults that are on the hook either for their own student loans or because they've guaranteed a student loan of a son, daughter, grandchildren, et cetera. And now we're going to pick up just this year regulation of home mortgage servicers. So we do a lot of regulation and enforcement, but we also do consumer education and outreach. And we work with something called the Office or Division of Community Engagement within the Attorney General's office. And we sponsor programs. For example, Barbara mentioned the Denver Connect Van through the Office of Aging in the City and County of Denver. we actually underwrote a great portion of that van, of its design, of its high-tech equipment that she mentioned. And that van, in addition to all the other amazing services it provides around the city and county of Denver, hands out consumer education materials that our office designs. And I'll talk a little bit about that at the end on our Stop Fraud Colorado website. But, you know, we're all about consumer education and outreach, because if we can prevent the fraud from happening, we feel like it's much easier for us to prosecute the truly bad cases at the other end. So that's a really quick sense for you of what the Attorney General's Office Consumer Protection Mission is. And so we're gonna get into more substance now. And Frank, I'd like you to start with, you know, what are the more common or most common investment scams targeting older Coloradans that your office encounters?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So now I'm sure that the level of experience with the securities markets, the stock market, probably varies significantly on this call. But I'm going to go through some common scams that we see, and then I'm going to turn it back to Jan, and he'll talk about some that they're seeing at the AG's office. But fraudsters are always trying to take advantage of others, regardless of your age, your geographic location, or even your experience level with the markets. That is, after all, their job, to find victims and take advantage of them. Our job here today is to better educate you about potential scams and then give you the resources to avoid common traps. Now, I'm going to start off by showing you a brief video from the movie The Wolf of Wall Street with actor Leonardo DiCaprio. This is how investment fraud is depicted in the movies. And note that this is actually based on a true story. This is what the guy that Mr. DiCaprio is playing did, among many other worse things. Also note that the company he's pitching in this clip is really just a shack in the middle of nowhere in the United States. So I'm going to encourage you to turn up your volume. I'm going to do my best to share this, but here we go.
Well, reason for the call today, John, is something just came across my desk, John. It is perhaps the best thing I've seen in the last 6 months. If you have 60 seconds, I'd like to share the idea with you. You got a minute? Name of the company, Aerotine International. It is a cutting-edge, high-tech firm out of the Midwest, awaiting imminent patent approval on a next generation of radar detectors that have both huge military and civilian applications. Now, right now, John, the stock trades over the counter at 10 cents a share. And by the way, John, our analysts indicate it could go a heck of a lot higher than that. Your profit on a mere $6,000 investment would be upwards of $60,000.
Jesus, that's my mortgage, man.
Exactly, you could pay off your mortgage.
This stock will pay off my house.
John, one thing I can promise you, even in this market, is that I never ask my clients to judge me on my winners. I ask them to judge me on my losers because I have so few. And in the case of Aerotine, based on every technical factor out there, John, we are looking at a grand slam home run.
Okay, let's do it. I'll do $4,000.
4,000, that'd be 40,000 shares, John. Let me lock in that trade right now and get back to you with my secretary with an exact confirmation. Sound good, John? Great. Hey, John, thank you for your vote of confidence, and welcome to the Investors Center.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man.
Bye-bye.
So I always get a kick out of watching that clip, especially the looks of everyone that's around him, because they're amazed at what a good swindler he is. But what is depicted in this scene is a scam that we refer to as a boiler room. This is when outfits like our actor here use high pressure sales tactics to sell shady stocks to clients who are called randomly out of the blue so that the salesperson can sell the stock and earn commissions. Now, although the stock may be real, usually a very cheap penny stock, here it was 10 cents a share, the information that the salesperson uses to promote the product is often false or misleading. As you saw, it was a shack in the middle of nowhere. In these operations, many of the salespeople are not qualified or even licensed to sell stock or other securities. They use smooth, fast, convincing talk like our actor did here, and they promise riches from their investments and guarantee you that there's no risk involved. As he said here, a grand slam. And they often try to tell you how successful they are. He said he has so few losers, and how rich everyone has gotten from their advice. And this type of scam became so popular in the 1980s and 1990s, that they even made a movie called Boiler Room about it. A similar type of scheme is called the so-called pump and dump. This is where promoters, often guys like this guy, hype cheap stocks to attract investors through false or misleading statements. The companies that they sell to you often have no earnings, no assets, and even no real business operations. The fraudsters themselves own the vast majority of the shares of the company. And once they convince enough people to buy, the stock price goes way up. That's when the fraudsters sell, when it's at its top. And as a result of selling all of their shares, the share price plummets and all of us are left with worthless stock. Now, another big investment scam is the notorious Ponzi scheme. Now, obviously, none of you have ever heard of Bernie Madoff. Well, that fraud, the one perpetrated by Mr. Madoff, was the largest Ponzi scheme ever run. And that investment scam is essentially where you rob one person to pay another. There are no real investments being made. Initial investors are paid with money taken from new investors. And as long as new investors keep coming in, there'll be money to pay off the old investors. And so people that invest may see early returns, but those are misleading because once new investors stop coming in, or as what happened during the financial crisis, too many investors demand they get their money back, the scheme collapses, investors lose their money, and Mr. Madoff walks off rich. Now, I'm going to talk about just two other quick ones. One is the oil and gas scheme, which is very prevalent in Colorado. If you think that you found the right oil or gas investment to, quote, strike it rich, consider this. It's probably a scam. The oil and gas industry is very popular, especially in Colorado, and its publicity is used to lure investors into what sound like legitimate opportunities. Always do your research, and when you see oil and gas opportunities, take your time and look at them because many of them are frauds. The last scam I'm going to mention is the affinity fraud. And this one is particularly stomach churning because it's when somebody in the community or somebody we know, they pretend to have a connection to you, some level of trust. And it's where a member of our same cultural, racial, ethnic, or religious community seeks you out, hoping that that bond between you will be a way to scam you. An example will be like if you met somebody at shul and then they gain your trust and confidence based on that bond. It's very important that you always check the background of any seller before you invest, even if they go to your place of worship or live in your neighborhood or share a common background. So those are kind of some of the prevalent investment scams we're seeing, including the video clip. Jan, now that we've looked at some of the SEC frauds, what are the top consumer complaints that you see at the Attorney General's office?
So, yeah, thank you, Frank. And I think everybody not only enjoyed the clip, but noticed the remarkable resemblance Leo DiCaprio and I have. And that is tongue in cheek. One of the things I'm going to talk about in a moment, imposter fraud. Not that I could actually in real life pull that off. I'm going to talk a little bit in a few minutes about sort of specific COVID-19 scams that we're seeing. But our number one complaint the last year has been identity theft. And we see identity theft trends in the following areas. We see medical identity theft, where the scam artists get a hold of your Medicare enrollment number. They may get a hold of your insurance number, a whole variety of ways. Maybe you're getting statement of benefits in the mail and you're just throwing them away without shredding them. And they're going through your trash and they're picking up your statement of benefits form. And then they'll apply for Medicare themselves. They may go visit doctors or otherwise access healthcare in your name, and you're not even aware of it. Number two trend that we're seeing involves income tax theft. And this occurs a couple of different ways. They either take employment using your identity, your social security number, and never pay taxes on the money they're paid. And all of this income shows up in your name under your social security number with the IRS, and they'll come after you or try to come after you for those back paid taxes. The other way this happens, and there actually was a really large criminal ring that was operating out of the prison systems in California, in which they were applying for income tax refunds in the name of California consumers because they had gotten access to dates of birth and social security numbers so that they could, and they literally were just generating income tax return after income tax return and having those returns, those refunds deposited in bank accounts that family members or their co-conspirators had set up outside of prison. The biggest one, however, is that we're starting to see, and I'm sure some of you at Kavod have seen this, is unemployment insurance. And unemployment insurance exploded during the pandemic when people were out of work and they were inundating the State Department of Labor and Employment with claims for unemployment benefits. Well, as a result of a lot of data breaches in the past year or two, including the massive one at Experian, the Credit Reporting Bureau, there is a lot of information about people out there, about their name, their address, their social security number, their work or work history even. And so these people from all over the world, and there was a big ring of the identity theft imposters that were out of Nigeria and out of Eastern Europe, were applying for benefits in your name or your friends' names or your family's names. And we get complaints where people haven't been in the workforce for 15 years, and all of a sudden they get a prepaid debit card from the Department of Labor and Employment for uninsurance benefits they never applied for. Or they get a letter from the Department of Labor, asking questions about their benefits. There is an estimated 1.2 million false unemployment insurance claims that were filed in the state of Colorado just through the end of 2020. Attorney General Weiser actually set up a task force to try to deal with that particular problem and that particular fraud. So if you happen to receive a letter or get a benefit card in the mail, contact the Department of Labor and Employment. They have a special place for you on their website to file complaints. What we're hoping to find is somebody who actually takes benefits in your name and cashes them, because that's how we're going to find out where they are. But those are the big trends that we're seeing right now in identity theft. I want to mention one last thing. The sad truth is that identity theft does not end when you or a loved one passes. We see last year in the country about 2.5 million cases of identity theft involving a deceased individual. And that's because they still have a credit report. They still have a credit history. If they have gotten your information through an Experian data breach or otherwise, you will find, as you're trying to close out the estate of a loved one, that all of a sudden there's brand new credit cards showing up. There's brand new loans being taken out. So you've got to be kind of self-conscious as you get older and older to do simple things like put a security freeze on your credit reports so that somebody, even after you've passed, can't take advantage of the good credit you've built up during your life. If you're the executor on a estate, you want to make sure and send the credit bureaus death certificates, send the banks and credit card companies death certificates, so all of those things can be closed out. But identity theft this year was our #1 most complained about tactic. primarily unemployment insurance. So as we talk about consumer fraud, Frank, and investment fraud, you know, these people who commit these frauds use and we saw it with the DiCaprio bit from Wolf of Wall Street. They have all kinds of persuasion tactics that they use to try to, you know, dispossess us of our money. Why don't you walk us through some of the things that you see these scam artists employing to try to convince us that what they're selling is real?
Yeah, so I'll go through those. I was just taken by everything you were saying about the lengths that people go to commit these scams, even running a scheme out of prison. You would think that would stop them, but they're literally running it out of prisons. That's just unbelievable. As Jan said, there are many persuasion tactics, and I'm going to go over them with you so that you can learn and you don't have to be scared about when they come to you, because you'll know what to do. Now, recognizing common red flags and knowing about the high pressure persuasion tactics, like the one you saw in the movie clip, are the best way to avoid being scammed. Don't worry, we're not going to have a test afterwards, but I'm going to send some materials to you after the call through Gabriel so that you can refresh your recollection if you need to. First, the most important lesson I want you to learn today is this. If an investment sounds too good to be true, it is. Many scams sound too good to be true, such as promises of riches with little or no risk. Trust your instincts. If the offer promises that you're going to become rich overnight with little or no risk, it's likely a scam. Ask yourself, is this investment promising to give me so much more than major stock indexes or what others are doing in the market? If it is, it's likely a scam. Second, and related to that point, watch out for promises of guaranteed returns. Like Mr. DiCaprio said, it's a sure thing. Learn this rule. All investments have risk, no matter what they are. No matter how established or successful a company is or how safe a product looks, every time you invest your money, there's at least some risk. There's no such thing as a guaranteed return. Every investment carries some degree of risk, and that level of risk correlates with the return that you can expect to receive. Now, most fraudsters spend a lot of time. They try to convince you that there's extremely high returns that are guaranteed, or they can't miss opportunities like this one in the video. Never believe it. Low risk means that you can expect low returns, and high risk means that you might get higher returns. If your money is particularly safe, like in a savings account, you're likely to get a very small return. High returns are only for those folks who are willing and financially able to take very big risks. And remember this. Just because someone you know in the community has made money, or at least claims to have made money, doesn't mean you will too. Like our actor, avoid the pressure to buy right now. Take your time. Don't ever be pressured to buy right now. No legitimate investment ever requires a quick decision. Resist the pressure to invest quickly. Take your time to think about it. Investigate before sending money. If the investment is truly that great of an opportunity, it will still be there after you've done your research. Fraudsters like to create a false sense of urgencies by saying that there's only a limited supply or a limited time. They say, send the money right now, act now, or it will be gone. You know, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. Those are not true. Be particularly careful if the promoter says that the recommendation is based on inside or confidential information, which in and of itself is a crime. Remember that a fraudster doesn't want you to think too much about the investment, because if you do, you might figure out the scam. Another red flag of fraud is where you receive an unsolicited offer. That's where you are approached and not the other way around. Be very careful of those types. An example is where, like our actor, he calls somebody out of the blue, or you receive an email or a post on social media, or you hear a radio or newspaper ad, or worse, somebody offers to give you a free dinner seminar. Be very careful of these because the person has something to sell you. Do your homework if you're tempted by that offer, but better yet, I advise you walk away. And be extra careful if somebody says, you should go invest in this offshore investment in Nigeria. When you send your money abroad and something goes wrong, it's very hard for us to get it back for you. Now, there are other persuasion tactics that I just want to mention quickly. A lot of these fraudsters, they dangle the so-called phantom riches, that you will become rich overnight. Another one that they use, particularly for seniors, is they offer to do you a small favor, like, let me drive you to the supermarket. And then while he's driving you there, he asks you to invest in the company that they're pitching. Another one is where they talk about, well, everyone else in the community, everyone else at Kavod has made money on this. Don't believe it. Even folks you know or respect might be taken in by this. Be very careful. And of course, as I said earlier, they may give you a free dinner or a free lunch seminar. Nothing comes without a catch. When they say, I'll waive my fee for you this time, or I'll give you a special rate if you invest today, be super careful. Take your time. Now, two other quick things to keep in mind, because there are particular ways that fraudsters attack seniors. Like our actor, watch out for the smooth talkers. Never judge a person's integrity by how he or she sounds. Successful con artists know how to sound professional. They're used car salesmen. They can sell you snake oil. They make even the flimsiest deals sound like a sure thing. And they know that being professional, dressing up in a suit, combined with polite manners or wanting to be your friend may lead older investors to accept their advice. Watch out also for professionals who prey on your fears. Con artists know that many seniors worry about the adequacy of their retirement savings, especially if they're faced with mounting medical expenses. As a result, fraudsters often pitch these get-rich-quick schemes to seniors. So the one thing I'll leave you with in this section is just always take your time and do your research. Don't fall prey to the, I have to do it right now. So now that I've looked at some of these persuasion tactics that are in the SEC space, Jan, why don't you tell us about some of the things you're seeing, in particular, the imposter scams that you referenced earlier?
So yeah, thank you. And that's, I have to say, everything that Frank just walked through in terms of persuasion tactics applies in consumer fraud as well as in investment fraud. What I'm going to talk about is the one that he mentioned last, and that is fear. I think fear, whether you're an older Coloradan or not, is one of the most motivating, in a negative way, motivating emotions that can be invoked. With imposter fraud, it's always about fear. All right. It's the phone call from an FBI agent who is going to ask you questions about income taxes that you owe and never paid. And the fear is that you will be arrested and prosecuted. And they will go so far as to even threaten you with arrest or bodily injury if you do not come up with the taxes that they claim that you are owed. It may be a call from the Medicare claiming that there are problems with your benefits and that your benefits are on hold because of some problem or some inappropriate access to your benefits. And you're thinking about medical procedures that you've already scheduled and now may be unavailable to you. It might be the Social Security Administration who tells you that your Social Security benefits have been blocked because of unauthorized access to your Social Security account, and that you cannot expect that you're going to get your Social Security check or payment in the mail. It may be a company claiming to be, for example, Microsoft, who sends you an email or makes a phone call or pops up an advertisement on your computer screen that says that they are aware that your computer has been infected with a virus and that all of your personal information is at risk, right? Again, it's about fear. It may be the sheriff's department calling because you missed jury duty and they're going to arrest you because missing jury duty is a criminal offense. And they're going to want you to provide either personal information or financial information, or in almost every single one of these scenarios that I mentioned, they're going to want you to make a payment, right? They're going to want you to pay some made up amount of unpaid taxes. They're going to want you to refund some unauthorized Medicare expenditures. They're going to want you to pay money to reopen your Social Security Administration, or they're going to want you to pay over the phone a criminal fine for having missed your jury duty, or they're going to charge you $500 to remotely come in and clean up the viruses that they tell you are on your computer. And all of this, I'm here to tell you, are all of it is false. Okay, how do you know it's false? Well, the easiest one is that the government does not call you on the phone, right? How many people are on Social Security benefits? Tens and tens of millions. How many on Medicare? Tens and tens of millions, right? How many people pay taxes? Again, tens and hundreds of millions. When is the IRS going to find time to call you up personally, right? When is Medicare going to find time to call you up personally, right? Or the Social Security Administration, right? Computer hacked. I mean, your computer's got a virus. Well, how would Microsoft ever know that your computer has a virus? They don't have access to your computer. They don't know what's on your computer, right? It's all designed to create a sense of fear or panic so that you lose the common sense you spent your entire life developing. Some of the red flags beyond the fact that the government's not going to call you is that they're going to ask for payment, something the government never does. They may write you a letter. The IRS does everything via letter, but they're not going to ask you over the phone to please wire me some money. Go to Western Union, right? There's one at the Walmart nearby, or go buy a prepaid gift card. And I'll wait for you to do that. And then you read the number off the back of the card to me so that they can access that money and nobody will ever be able to find it. They may ask today that you pay it in Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies that I am way too old to figure out what the heck cryptocurrencies and Bitcoins are. There was a great editorial in the Denver Post yesterday because Bitcoin apparently it loses its value about every 6 months. And there's somebody asking a woman investor whether she would like to be paid in Bitcoin or in a handful of sawdust, because that's kind of the same exact thing. So those are very common red flags, right? Sense of urgency, creation of fear, very unusual payment mechanisms that they want you to use to send money. So the bottom line is, if it's a phone call, you don't recognize the number, don't answer it. If somebody comes on the line and you do pick it up and they say they're FBI or sheriff or police, Medicare, it's a scam, hang up the phone. And if they want you to make an immediate payment in an unusual way, that should really hammer home to you the fact that it's a scam. So anyway, that's what we're seeing in imposter frauds today. And we're going to spend the rest of the session talking about sort of prevention measures. And Frank, what can consumers do to protect themselves from investment scams in Colorado?
Sure. And I was particularly happy that you raised that point about the fact that the government will never call you to collect money. It's exactly what Jan said, and Microsoft doesn't know what's on your computer. I thought that was an excellent point. I personally received a letter from the IRS saying that I owed an extra $40. Even that official letter, I checked it out. I made a phone call to make sure that it was a legitimate letter. Maybe that's a little neurotic of me in some ways, but I did. But I do want to reiterate that's just an absolute great point that Jan makes. I'm never going to call you up. The IRS is never going to call you up and say, pay us this money before tomorrow night, or we're going to seize your assets. So please keep that in mind. In terms of prevention measures, what happens if that smooth talking actor, but the real life one, comes and gives you high pressure sales pitches? First of all, don't worry. We're here today to give you the tools to fight these guys. There's a lot of them out there, but you will have the resources to do what is necessary, mostly by resisting them. So we're always here as a resource, and Jan's agency is as well. Please reach out to us. But your first line of defense is take your time and do your research, and be extra careful about people who just contact you out of the blue. Now, I've no doubt that all of you have worked hard your entire life, and the last thing you want to do is throw away your hard-earned money on bad investments, or worse, to allow some guy to come in and take it from you. Many of you have likely invested in the stock market, and maybe some of you still do. Con artists like to target seniors for a variety of reasons. Unfortunately, as Jan was saying, we saw a big uptick in securities fraud during the pandemic, including scams specifically targeting the investments and savings of older Americans. Now, as I said, with some basic understanding of how these scam artists operate, you can avoid their tactics. So first, I want to repeat what I said earlier. It is important to recognize these red flags and persuasion tactics. Legitimate investment professionals do not use them. They will never say you have to buy today or the opportunity will be gone. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. You have a guaranteed return. All of those are false statements. They are meaningless. Run away. Okay? Scam artists try to be super nice and develop this false bond of friendship, like driving you to the supermarket. They prey on seniors who are polite and have difficulty saying no. Just say, no, thank you, I'll think about it, and hang up the phone. So what are some other things to do? Always ask your questions, but remember that fraudsters don't have any incentive to set you straight or to tell you the truth. Do your own research. Savvy investors take the time to do their own research and talk to friends and family before investing. And in a worst case scenario, call the SEC. Somebody will help you. Remember that unsolicited emails, message board postings, phone calls, company news releases should never be the sole reason that you turn over your hard-earned money. Make sure you understand the investment, the risk attached, and the company's history. And always research the investment professional. Make sure they're licensed or in good standing. Look at the company and its business and the type of investment product they're selling you. If they're trying to sell you something you've never even heard of, walk away, because that means it's not for you. Now, after you invest, remember, never lose sight of your investments. Don't trust an investment professional who says, leave everything to me, I'll take care of you. You should always question anything in your account and keep your eye on your money. Remember, it's your money. You have the right to do that. And always question if you ask for your money back or your profits. Don't be fooled by explanations when they say, well, your money is tied up in this investment, or you know what's better, just roll over your profits into something else. Those are not legitimate explanations. You always have a right to get your money back. And most importantly, never be afraid to complain. If you suspect that fraud is happening or a questionable practice, or you're not getting satisfactory answers to your questions, don't let embarrassment or concern that somebody's going to judge you to be incapable of handling your own affairs. Don't let that prevent you from going to the SEC. We are here for you for that reason. We have your back, and we will investigate the conduct. Now, as Jan said, we're never going to call you. The IRS is never going to call you to collect money from you. And Jan's point about if you don't recognize a caller that's calling you, don't pick up the phone. Let them leave a message or something, and then you can go back. And in that note, if anyone ever says you have to pay us a fee in order to get your investment profits or winnings in a lottery, that's false too. That never is a legitimate thing. In terms of paying for your investments, never pay for them with credit cards or gift cards or wire transfers or as Jen was talking about, Bitcoin, if you have any. These are not legitimate ways to pay for investments. Legitimate stockbrokers have legitimate ways to transfer money from your bank account. Never be fooled into, here, give me your credit card number. And that goes to another thing. If you do pick up the phone, never give personal information out over the phone, and certainly do not send it in emails. I would say one more thing about emails. If you ever do get an email and it's asking you for something that just doesn't seem right, take a look at the email address. Make sure that the email address says where the sender's coming from. I was just helping my mother-in-law with something like that recently. The person said that they were from Chase Bank, but when you looked at the email address, they had a Gmail email address, which means that they are not from Chase Bank. Fraudsters basically want you to make quick decisions. They want you to think that you can do these things, you'll get rich overnight. It's not the way it works. It takes a sustained commitment. And like the turtle, slow and steady wins the race. So these are some of the things that you can do. And again, I'm going to send out more information through Gabriel, and he'll pass it on to you. But Jan, I had mentioned that we saw some uptick in securities fraud, stock fraud during the pandemic. Is Colorado seeing complaints that are specific to COVID-19? So in your area?
We are, Frank, and I'm going to be a little briefer. I know we're approaching an hour in, so I want to respect your time. But, we started off when the pandemic was first in the news a year and a half ago with, phony offers for personal protective equipment, phony offers for in-home coronavirus tests, all kinds of claims of cures and treatments and vaccines before there were even vaccines or treatments available. Those have sort of winnowed away a little bit as we now have actual vaccines. You can actually get an in-home COVID test that the Federal Food and Drug Administration has approved. It seems like you can buy masks and gloves and hand sanitizer literally everywhere. My local hardware store has boxes and boxes of it. But what we're seeing, interestingly enough, because these scam artists go with the flow and know what's going on. And so now that people are vaccinated, there's all this talk in the media about what they're variously called vaccine passports. And there's talk about that if you want to travel overseas, or if you want to get into a sporting event or a music event, that you may have to prove that you've been vaccinated. Now, those of us who are vaccinated get one of these, right? This is the official Center for Disease Control vaccine form. and your pharmacy or whomever provided your vaccine fills this out for you. Well, interestingly enough, you can now go online and buy fake CDC vaccination cards. And the Attorney General of Colorado and a bunch of other states recently wrote to some of the major online retailers, Amazon, Google, about this exact scam. So watch out for it. Don't let somebody who you know has not been vaccinated say, yeah, but I saw that I can go online and buy one of these things. I'd be surprised if you spend money and even get a card that looks remotely like this. Vaccine passports, another thing. There's going to be all kinds of phony deals out there about, acquire a vaccine passport that will get you on any airline flying to any foreign country, into any sporting event or musical event or museum or library. It's always safe to talk with the medical professional that you trust and that you've known when you have questions about things like vaccines, when you have things like a vaccine card and how to prove that you've been properly vaccinated. So I encourage you to never fall for these, hyped ads about how you can, for a fee, acquire a card, acquire a vaccine, acquire a cure. So that's really what I'd say about those. Trust your medical professionals. And so, Frank, as we wrap up, if I think I'm a victim of an investment scam, I think I've been Bernie Madoff, where do I go? How do I file a complaint about that?
Let me just say, I recognize that we just have a little time left. So I'm putting this up, but I will circulate information through Gabriel. The best way to reach out to the SEC is go to the Office of SEC Investor Education. The email address is simple: help@sec.gov. help@sec.gov. You can also call the Denver regional office. I put the number up here, 303-844-1000. Feel free to ask for me, or just tell somebody that you need to talk to them about a potential fraud. And the email address is simple for the Denver office. It's denver@sec.gov. We also have a great website called investor.gov that you can go to. There are a lot of resources on there, particularly resources for seniors. But with the time permitting, I will, let me just ask Jan, what resources are available for seniors at the AG's office?
So if you'll, I'm gonna jump in and try to share my screen briefly as well. So what I want to do in about a minute is direct people to this website. Okay, it's stopfraudcolorado.gov, stopfraudcolorado, all one word, .gov. This is a website that our office maintains, and it provides an unending list of helpful tips. Right up here in the top right-hand corner, you'll see a report button. You can fill out a very simple, tell us your story. You can upload documents if you want us to look at them, although I encourage you not to send in bank statements unless we call and ask for it. But you can do things like at the very bottom of this webpage right here, fraud alerts and tips. I urge you to go to this site, stopfraudcolorado.gov, and sign up for our monthly newsletters and our other consumer protection alerts and tips. I think it will be extremely valuable. You can also, at the very bottom, you'll see down here, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. We have a very, very active social media presence on all things consumer fraud related. So I just put this up to show you stopfraudcolorado.gov.